Welcome to the Journey of a Man podcast with your man, Dre Jordan. I got a really special guest here today. The Journey of a Man podcast is for men to talk about our journey in life, which ultimately determines who we are or will become. The obstacles we face are real and often will derail us from our desired destination. This podcast gives us a platform to express ourselves about the journey we have experienced, our upbringing, relationships, marriages, fatherhood, careers, finances, spirituality, divorce, and co-parenting. Hopefully bridging our support for one another while respecting, uplifting other men and women. The trajectory for men must change, and together we can create a pathway to success. My next guest, a very special brother of mine, Michael K. Bonds. Mike was always known to have a heart of a lion. Mike was born in Washington, D.C. at D.C. General Hospital. He was educated in the D.C. public school system, starting at Brooklyn Elementary, Duke Ellington School of Arts, and graduated high school at McKinley Tech Senior High School in 1983. Mike met his beautiful wife, Nerlene, married in 1987, and together had two children, Mark Anthony Bonds and Mikhail Bonds, and four grandchildren, Ray, Jaden, Frank, and Olivia. Mike had some ups and downs in life with drugs, alcohol, and marriage, but says, quote, "When I move out of my way and stop blaming others for my problems and allow God to change me through his word, life becomes clear. Now I can use my experience to help others." Unquote. Mike broadcasts on Facebook Live Monday through Friday at 7 p.m., giving words of inspiration from the Bible. Mike's favorite prayer is the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
But now I see a man named Jesus came and rescued me. He took my sins and washed me in his blood. And now I'm saved because of his love. I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Come unto me, and I'll give you rest, saved by grace." When I was in darkness, he took my sins away. Now I'm saved and I've been set free. I thank you, Lord, for delivering me. Grace through faith, he made a way. Trust and believe, and you will see. And I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Come unto me, and I'll give you rest, saved by grace." When I was in darkness, he took my sins away. Get up and be a witness and clap your hands if you know it's been good to you. Saved by grace. Get up and be a witness and clap your hands if you know it's been good to you. Wow, wow. Get up and be a witness and clap your hands if you know he's been good to you. Get up and be a witness and clap your hands if you know he's been good to you. Get up and be a witness.
Bruh, bruh, I'm getting up and I'm gonna be a witness and I'm gonna clap my hands, man, because
Yes, sir.
he dug
Yeah,
us out of the dirt, man. He is the one who make us thrive for sure, man.
that's right.
Thank you for joining us, man. And look, and this is the thing, you and I have been brothers, man, since McKinley. And I must say, our relationship has never changed. Every time
Hmm.
we give each other love, man, and respect. I can appreciate that, Mike. You've always had a heart of line, man. You was a fun dude to be around. Always was genuine. You had a genuine heart, man.
Yeah,
Regardless of the mistakes that you made, you always had a genuine heart, man. So I just want to thank you, man, for joining me and to share your story, Mike. Because just like I was telling you, you got an interesting story, brother.
yeah,
Tell, and I want you to get it out, man. Just like we were talking about, if we reach one,
that's
man,
right.
making progress, bro. And I see so many young men out here struggling, young boys out here struggling, man, that need to hear this inspiration to know that they're not alone in this fight in this world, right?
That's right.
So if you don't mind, Mike, I'm gonna give the floor to you, man. Go and tell me about you, man. Tell me about your life, man, where you grew up, the different trajectories in your life that ultimately determine who you are right now, bro. Because let me say something. Let me just say this before you start. I didn't realize, man, you had that talent of singing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I heard you. I said, "Who's that singing?" I said, "It's Mike Barnes." I said, "Well, what?" You was wrong, bro. You was wrong, man. That's a gift God has given you, man. And I'm looking at the video, and I'm saying, "Wow, that brother's talented, man." And you just want to use the talent that God has given you, man, to help others. And I can, and trust me and believe me, that's what I'm trying to do right now, too.
Right. You doing it.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna give the floor to you, man. Just tell me a little bit about you, man. Let's just chop it up, man. Just about life.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, man, for allowing me to be on your platform. This is a wonderful, great opportunity, and I feel honored, man, to be on here, that you would ask me to be on here. And I commend you for what you're doing, because we need more brothers like you to do things like this to help us, right? This is not only me sharing my story, but this is helping me also.
Right.
So I thank you once again. And like you said about me, you always been the same guy ever since I know you. Been a good dude from day one, always, right? Always, man. Someone that was honest and just was a good, solid guy ever since I've known you, man.
Appreciate it,
So,
Mike.
I commend you for this, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was born in 1964, like you read in DC General Hospital.
That was a good
And
year.
that was a great year. That was a great year. Matter of fact, April the 2nd, 1964.
Yeah, March of the week.
Yeah, same birthday as Marvin Gaye. That's why I got the Marvin Gaye in the background.
Yeah.
But my parents were really young when they had me. My mom was 20 and my dad was 22 years of age when they had me. And then they decided to, I guess, get married, which probably wasn't the best idea at the time because they were just kids. You know what I mean? They were a kid that had a kid. So really they were unprepared for me. They had prepared to have me. You know what I mean? So they really didn't have the tools necessary to raise a kid. Right? I hold nothing against them because I turned around and did the exact same thing they done. But like I said, I grew up in Washington, D.C. We lived in Northwest, actually on Clifton Street. And we lived there for a while. And I can remember this. I was thinking about this today. When I was 7 years old, maybe 6, my father brought me and my mom into the living room. We had an apartment on Clifton Street. And he sat us down and he told my mother, he said, I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he was saying he wanted to leave, he wanted to separate.
Mm-hmm.
But as a child, I don't necessarily think I needed to be in there to hear that conversation. That should have been between him and her, because how does a 6-year-old process that?
Right.
I don't know how to process that. So the two people that I hold in high regard now are getting ready to part ways. So my whole world was crushed.
Mm-hmm.
So in him saying that, it's like he was telling me, I don't love you. Even though he didn't say that, and I know he loved me, but if you're leaving her, you're leaving me also. So therefore, my world was crushed at 7, right? So my mother, eventually, my mother is from North Carolina, my dad is from South Carolina. So my mother eventually moved to North Carolina, took me and moved to North Carolina. So all my life, I was back and forth between North Carolina and DC. So let me say this. The reason why God designed a man and a woman to be together, a kid needs both parents, both of them, because both of them have something to offer. I needed something from my dad, and I needed something for my mom to become a whole, complete individual. But I didn't get that, right? My mom moved to North Carolina, and that was a total culture shock to me. Total. I moved to North Carolina in the 70s. So me leaving up here, and I didn't put that in my bio, but I went to school down there also. I went to school in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 6th grade, and part of the 7th that we moved back up here. But going to North Carolina, it was a different lifestyle. It was the first time I faced racism head on. Being called the N-word. Going to a school where they didn't want you there, you know, they didn't want you at their school. They loved you when you played sports or you did something to make the school look good. But at the end of the day, they let you know that this is not your school. This is our school. So all of this stuff I'm having to deal with at 6 and 7 and 8 years old. But the great thing about the country was me and my mother lived with my great-grandparents. Now, not a lot of people get the opportunity to live with their great-grandparents. My great-grandfather probably was the greatest man I ever knew, period. What he done in the time that he lived, all the land that he bought and how he took care of everybody in the time that he came up in it doesn't leave me excuse not to succeed now. I have no excuse. He right out of slavery, Jim Crow times, and all of this stuff. So therefore, he really taught me how to be the man that I wanted to be. I looked at him, he was everything to me, right? And the whole community where we live, all that land, he owned it. He owned it. But being away from my dad, I was miserable though. You know, I was down there with my mom. My mom, backtracking, when we were up here and her and my dad split, my mom started to drink. So in her drinking, you know, she became an alcoholic. I don't want to deal with this because my mother and my dad both dealt with abandonment issues, both of them, right? So my grandmother left my mother in North Carolina when she was a child and moved to New York and moved to DC. My father's mother left him with his grandfather and took his brother and moved to New York. And my father never saw his mother ever again. So my father really, I hate to use this word, he hated his mother because he thought that his mother picked his brother over him and took the brother and left him. So, and then my grandmother left my mother with my great-grandparents for 12 years. It was 12 years before she came back and got her. So now I'm being raised by two parents that both have abandonment issues, right? So they're two hurt individuals. So only thing a hurt person can do is hurt me, not intentionally. They don't mean to hurt me intentionally, but they can only give me what they had. And they weren't equipped to be parents, and they weren't equipped to be married, right? So all of that I was going to catch. So in that, and my father and mother separated, my mother started to drink a lot. And my mother and grandmother's relationship was toxic. Just this toxic, because when my grandmother did send for my mother and they got back together, my mother thought that, okay, I've been gone for 12 years, so now I got my mother back and we're going to have this great storybook relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen. My grandmother was kind of mean, and maybe she was probably trying to look out for my mother, but my mother had 12 years of resentment against my grandmother. She felt like, you owe me. You left me for 12 years, so I resent you. So you owe me, right? So all my life being little, I had to watch my mother being heartbroken and cry and drink. Your father don't love me. My mother don't love me. You the only one that love me, right? So now I'm a little kid being thrust into a grown-up's life, right? I didn't get an opportunity to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was robbed from me. I'm dealing with grown people problems that I never should have had to deal with.
Right.
But now I'm trying to be a little kid and looking out for my mom when I just should be a kid going to school, trying to learn. But all that was hard for me because now I got all these problems on. I miss my father. He's not with me. My mother's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what do I have?
Right.
With a broken heart. And when I used to be around my grandmother and my mother, their relationship was so toxic that I would just be nervous all the time. Like I can remember being a kid, we'd sit at the table, we'd be eating, and I'm praying like, God, don't let my grandmother say nothing mean to my mother, because then my mother, she would just explode. You know, oh, you left me for 12 years and you weren't there for me. And then they get to arguing, and next thing I know, here it is, she grabbing clothes and we're in a cab.
Right. Walking
out the house, you know. And all my life, I just moved back and forth between DC and North Carolina. All my life. You know what I'm saying? And that's just, it was crushing. So eventually, my mother ended up coming back to DC. And that's when I finished up at Brooklyn and went to Duke Ellington, left there and went to McKinley. But now I'm a teenager. And my mother asked my dad, she said, look, you got to come get him. When I was about 14, 15, she said, look, he need to be around you. You got to come get him. So my dad came and got me, and I moved in with my dad. So that was good in one sense and bad in one sense, because my father, he loved me. That was my man. But my father was a single guy. My father worked every day. My father told me this. He said, look, you got to work and hustle. So my father worked, and so we. That's what he done, right? So we got the weed spot. And I'm in the house. If he's selling weed, I'm going to sell weed too. You see what I'm saying? And then I used to go out all the time. Go. If it was go every night, I'm going every night. And my mother said, look, man, you need to like kind of pull back on him. He don't need to be out. So my father was like, man, let him live. Let him live. He got to go out there and find out for himself. Well, in me finding out for myself and not having the guidance that I needed, right? So now I'm going to explore things. So not only am I'm selling weed, but I'm smoking weed. So I'm smoking weed, and first girlfriend in high school, she drinks, so I'm drinking. So I'm drinking, I'm smoking weed, and I'm hanging out. And now a lot of people don't know, but drinking and weed is just a gateway to something else.
Absolutely.
Eventually. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to a lot of people.
It does.
Nobody just really starts all smoking crack or snorting coke. You know, you start drinking, you start smoking weed, and then eventually you'll graduate to something else.
Looking for a new high, Mike.
New high. That's right. So my mother and father stayed separated for years. They never got back together. And my dad never got married again. And my mom did get married again. And then she got divorced. But in high school, I went to school, but I really wasn't focused because I had too much going on in my personal life. And I had no structure. Everybody loved me. My grandparents, my grandparents were a big help to me when I was smaller, because when my mother and father used to have arguments and stuff, I would call my grandparents and they would come get me every weekend. And I was just thinking about that the other day. They had to be in their 40s. So they spent their 40s and 50s watching me, giving up their weekends, coming to get me. So I would have a safe place, right? But in that safe place, it still was toxic because my grandmother would talk about how bad my mother was. So I got to listen to all these grown-up conversations that the kids should hear, and all of it is just breaking my spirit. It's just like crushing my spirit, ripping the spirit out of me. So I'm like, I love all these people, but these people don't seem to love each other. So what am I going to do?
Right.
So when I go to high school, like I went to Duke Ellington first. I auditioned, got in Duke Ellington, but I wasn't focused. I had no structure. I had no support system. So I didn't know how to take advantage of opportunity.
Right. Because look, in order for you to get in, you had to have some talent, bro.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. I see the talent in you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But so I was there, and my mother, she loved me so much, she kind of overcompensated to try to make up for the love that she didn't receive from my grandmother. She overcompensated when it came to me and my brother. So instead of just, when I called her and say, look, I don't like this school, I want to leave, right? I had nobody to say, no, you're going to stay there. You auditioned, you got in. It's hard, but you need to work hard and complete what you started, right? I had nobody say that to me. And then my mother, loved my mother to pieces. That's my girl. But throughout our life, when problems would come, she would always run. Like something happened in DC, okay, we're going to North Carolina. Something happened in North Carolina, we're going back to DC. So all my life, I moved back and forth, instead of staying put and saying, look, no matter what the problem is, we got to confront the problem, find a solution, and stay put. But instead of that, we would run. So that's what I learned how to do when I got old. I learned how to run. But I learned you can't run from yourself, right? The change has to come from within you. No matter where I ran to, I was there when I got there. So I realized my location wasn't a problem. It was me and the decisions I was making. That was the problem, right? So when I ran to McKinley, I went to McKinley. I called my mom. I was like, you got to get me out of Duke Ellington. She was like, okay, baby, I'm going to get you out. Got me out, got me over McKinley. Now all my friends over there, my whole crew over there. So what you think I'm going to do? It's on.
You going to run.
Oh, man, look, I ain't running from that. Not all them honeys.
No, I'm talking about you going to run with them.
Run with them. Listen, and I'm going to say, I got to be honest. When I got to Tech, it was a smorgasbord of girls. Just what I thought I needed. You know what I mean? It was the worst thing for me. But at that time, I thought it was the best thing for me. But it was a distraction. So now I got girls and girlfriends, and I'm selling weed, and I'm hanging out and going to class, but not applying myself. And then I'm cutting class, right? Ducking the teachers. But I'm thinking that I'm being slick ducking them, but they got what I'm trying to get. They don't care if I don't come to class. You understand? And then I realized what a disservice I done myself when I try to get into college, and I realized, man,
right.
When I took that entry test, they say, man, you below standard. You below standard. You got to take these classes first before you even get to the college level because you didn't apply yourself
in high school.
In high school. But that all stems, I don't want to blame anybody, but my home life had no structure because everybody around me was hurt. I'm being raised by a bunch of hurt people, angry people, people with resentments. And instead of looking at themselves, right, they looking at everybody else. My problems are stemming from everybody else. So I took on that same spirit. I said, well, look, my problem, I'm blaming everybody. My problem, well, I get high because my mother used to drink, my father sold weed, so now I'm blaming them for smoking coke. How could I blame them? But when I graduated McKinley, I graduated in 1983, right? So I went to UDC for a short time. I tried to get in, and I went for a short time, faking. Like everybody writes something on the bottom of their picture when you graduate, what you want to do. I put Air Force, knowing daggone well I'm not going nowhere near the Air Force, right? So I ended up going to UDC for a short time, but mind you, we're talking about the 80s, the early 80s, leading into the crack era, leading into the drug era, the hustling era. All of these things are a great big distraction for me.
Big explosion.
And one of my biggest regrets in my whole life, other than smoking crack, is having sex before I got married. I didn't know how devastating that would be to my life, even up to this point. How bad the struggle would be for the rest of my life, right? But 84, I started getting high. And 84, I met my wife. Me and my wife went to school together. She went to McKinley, and you know my wife, but I didn't know her in school. I didn't know her then. I met her when I got out of high school, 1984. And she already had a son, which is my son. I don't use the word stepson, but when I met her, she had a baby. And when we got together and decided to get married in 1987, I adopted my son. I took the whole responsibilities off his dad. Now he's mine. Because I looked at it as it was a blessing to me. You know what I mean? It was a blessing. And I knew we were going to have another child, so I didn't want him to feel any different than my daughter. They the same. I love them both. So you never hear me use the word stepson.
Right.
Period. That's my son. But in us hooking up, I did the same thing my mom and dad did. I was 23, right? I shouldn't have been nobody's dad at 23, and I shouldn't have been nobody's husband at 23. I had no knowledge of what a husband was or what a dad was. I had no parenting skills. I had no marital skills, and I had an addiction, right? And her also. So now you got two people struggling with addiction and in the world, in this drug world, in this 80s world, and we trying to raise a family. So we thought when we get married and what we thought that we were going to rescue each other. I thought she was going to be my savior and I was going to be her savior. We was going to save each other. Nah, the worst thing that ever happened, right? Because we needed to fix ourselves. We needed a lot of fixing.
Right.
All the hurt that I received from my family and the hurt that she received, things that we were lacking that we didn't have. So now we're going to bring all of this garbage in together and make one big pile of garbage and think it's going to work out.
Right.
And we didn't do it. Listen, God left perfect instructions on how things should go. People don't want to hear that, but it's true. If you want to know how to be married, it's in the book. It's in the Bible. How to date, how to be married, the whole process. But when you deviate from the true plan, then you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems. And I didn't have a good, example of what a marriage should be. My grandmother and grandfather were married. My grandfather was my man. But my grandmother used to talk real breezy to him sometimes. That used to bother me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That used to really get under my skin. And going back to my mother's father, my grandmother never married him. She never married him. Mm-hmm. And he ended up getting killed by mistaken identity. Somebody mistaked him for somebody else and shot him. Wow. So when my grandmother had my mother at 16, she had my mother at 16 years old. Mm-hmm. My grandmother got married to this guy named Legree at 19. Mm-hmm. He only lived less than a year and he died. So my grandmother was crushed by that. Mm-hmm. So she left. That's why she left my mother in North Carolina. She left. She went to New York and then she went to DC. So my grandmother used to drink and then she would talk about this guy in front of my grandfather. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so disrespectful. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like I said, all this environment was toxic. So now here it is. I get married. I got a drug addiction, right? So now I'm struggling with crack, off and on, back and forth, right? Trying to raise a child. So me and my wife end up saying, okay, we need a change of scenery. So we moved to North Carolina. Here we go. I'm running, right? I can't stay in DC. I'm running. So I go to North Carolina and we do good for a short time, but I'm there when I get there. She there. So the same things we did in DC, we did in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. We cheated in DC, we cheated in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. We got high in DC, we got high in North Carolina. Wasn't no different. Mm-hmm. We refused to change. So we end up separating. We separated probably in 1990, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. And me and my wife stayed separated for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. 4. I've been married now for 34 years. Mm-hmm. We've been together for like 37 years. Mm-hmm. But in that time frame, we separated for 4 years. We couldn't tolerate each other anymore. So she left North Carolina and left me down there. Mm-hmm. So my addiction got much worse. And I had been in and out of a few different rehabs, you know, and I might stay sober a year and then I go back to using again. And same with her. So we just had to part ways. But when I was 31 years old and my brother was graduating high school, I have a brother 13 years younger than me. And my brother was getting ready to go to the military. Uh-huh. So at this particular time, I wasn't working. I was just at the house and the recruiter came to the house to see my brother. So he said, hey, man, what you doing? I said, I ain't doing nothing. You know, I'm trying to find a job. He said, you ever thought about the military? I said, man, I took that test in high school. I didn't do so good, but I took it for the Air Force. He said, well, take it again for the military. I said, man, I'm 31. I'm not going to military, right? He said, just take it. So I took the test, 31 years old, passed the test. So now I said, okay, I'm going to military. I'm going to change my life and the military going to save me. So I'm running again. So I'm running straight off the block into the military. Get to the military. So called my wife. They was like, where Mike? It's like, Mike in the military. It's like, man, I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm in the military. Negative. Same thing I did on the street.
Did in the military.
Oh, I got high in the military. Got high in the military. I didn't get a dishonorable. They just let me out, but I'm gonna tell you how bad it was. Me and my wife had decided to get back together, and she came all the way to Texas, right, to meet me. And I went AWOL. And I was getting hot and nobody find me. She brought my kids and her, and they could not find me. Wow. She had to go back home. I was missing for 30 days. They thought I was dead. They thought I was dead, man. So I said, well, after this, I know we'll never get back together after that, you know. So when I got kicked out of the military, they sent me home. They say, man, look, we ain't gonna give you dishonorable, but you can get home. And what they done was I tested positive. I came home one year and got high when I came home. I went back and I tested positive. So when I got out of basic training, went to Texas, the test followed me. So it came back, you dirty. So they put me in a program. So when they put me in a program in the military, I went AWOL and I left. So this is when everybody's looking for me. I'm missing. My mother think I'm dead. She crying. Can't nobody find me. So long story short, I get out the military. I come back home, right? So I come back home and I'm doing just bad. I'm smoking. I'm getting high. I ain't working. So I went to this church, the church I used to go to, Shady Grove, and it was this guy there named Kenny. I'll never forget him. He had struggled with drugs, and he had been to this rehabilitation place, right, called Bethel Colony of Mercy. I never forget this place, up in the mountains in North Carolina. So he told me, he said, look, man, I know you done been in and out of programs before. He said, but you need to go to this program. And when this guy came home, he was different. It was like it was a light on him. He was like shining. So I said, man, I'm not going to no program. I done did programs. I'm not going. He said, man, you need to go to this program. Now, me being the conniving cat I am, I'm trying to find a program that got girls in it. Because I say, I'm going to go get myself fixed up, but I'm going to hit something while I'm in there too. Right? So I ain't surrendered. Right? I'm scared. I said, I'm going to smash somebody and I'm going to get myself together. But no. So he said, no, you're not. He said, you're not going to no program with no girls. You lunching. He said, you going up here to this place in the mountains with these people and they going to help you. You say, you see how I am now? They changed me. They can change you if you want the help. So my mother, I never forget it. Me and my mother get in the car and we driving up there. So my mother, we tight. So I can sway her. So when we get up there, we going up this mountain and we pull up in there. So I see all these people walking around, guys, right? And they come up to the car, how you doing? They so nice. So I said, Mom, I say, nah, man, I'm not staying up here. They too nice. They done drug these people or something. They acting funny. I'm not doing it. Plus, I say, do you see any black people up here? I said, I'm not staying up here with all these white people in the mountain in North Carolina. You gotta be crazy. I'm not staying up here, right? So my mother, I'm looking at her face. So I'm getting her. So she's like, yeah, I don't see no black people. She said, well, let's go inside. So I go in the building. So I'm whispering to her. I said, Mom, I'm not staying up here. I'm not staying up here. You don't see any black. I'm not staying up in the mountain with these white folks. You gotta be, you're crazy. So we get to the counter. All the people so nice, welcome here. We glad you're here. So I said, Mom, let's go. I'm out. So she was going for it. Soon as I said that, what walked through the door? Black guy. Where he come from? Then another black dude come. So now that excuse out the window, I gotta stay. I gotta stay. Best thing I ever did in my whole life. Bethel Colony of Mercy, right? The facilitator was a white guy named Paul Ritchie, little short guy. And his wife, we called her Mama L, right? Paul convinced me that God loved me. He did it. Every day he walked through the whole facility. It was like a campus. He would walk through there and he'd say, how you doing, Mike? I said, what's up, Paul? He said, you know God love you, right? I said, yeah, Paul. And I walk away. 5 minutes later, he see you again. How you feel, Mike? I said, Paul, I'm all right. He said, you know God love you, right? I said, yeah, Paul, right? So every single day, day in and day out, he would say this to me. God love you, man. God love you, man. So with the work they gave me to do and him telling me this, and then he would preach to us on Sundays and he would just, it was like it was hurting him for us to know how much God loved us, right? And it was a counselor up there. His name was Charles. Never forget him. He sat me down. He said, listen here, man. He said, you ain't got no drug problem. He said, you got a sin problem.
Mm.
Nobody ever told me that. He said, man, listen, everything in your life stems from sin.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. That's the foundation of what you're going through. He said, so we can deal with the sin nature in your life. We can deal with the drugs. We can deal with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I say bet. So everything that people told me to do, I did it. Now, mind you, at this time, me and my wife separated. So she called my mother, say, where Mike at? And she said, Mike in the mountains. Mike getting himself together, right? Mm-hmm. So she asked, could she call me? So my mother, the buffer, she's like, look, man, I don't need nobody messing him up. None of that. So I called her. We talked. I said, man, I'm doing great, man. This place is a great place. And I'm telling her stuff about God and scriptures and all this. So she say, you sound different. I said, what are you talking about? She said, man, you don't sound the same. You sound different. So then as time went on, we started talking about reconciling our relationship. Mm-hmm. So I went to the counselor. I said, look, man, me and my wife, we've been separated almost 4 years. I said, do you think that is God's will for us to get back together? The man said, listen, if both of you are willing, then it's God's will. He said, if both of y'all are willing, then it's God's will for you to be back together. He said, but if one is willing and one is not, don't waste your time. Right. So I told her, I said, look, man, this is where I am in my life, man. I'm standing on the principles of God, and we're going to get back together. We're going to have to do it like this. Right. And at that time, she was working with this lady, Sister Woot, and I'll never forget it. Sister Woot took my wife on some retreat. Right. So they go on this retreat, and my wife, she's thinking, I'm going to go on this retreat with these ladies, spiritual retreat, but I'm going to drink, and I got my weed. She got a weed with her and her drinks with her. So she going to turn up. But she go there, and they lay that thing on her. So she out at the water, she crying. She said, man, I threw my weed away. She said, I just stopped crying. I couldn't stop crying. So long story short, we get back together. Right. In 1998, we get back together, and I stayed sober for 10 years. 10. Mm-hmm. So now I'm back. We back together. We get back to DC, move back together. Everything is going fine. I get a job in Metro. Life is good. Mm-hmm. And I joined this church. It was Church of Lord Disciples at the time, and that's where I met Kenny. Kenny was a guitar player, and eventually I joined the praise and worship team and became the praise and worship leader at the church. Mm-hmm. And we stayed there. I stayed at church, I don't know, about 10 years, and then things resolved, and I left. I left the church. Mm-hmm. So mind you, I got 10 years clean. 10 years clean. I'm living for God. I'm doing good. But as we start to get things, got house and car and all these things, now, when I got all these blessings, the blessing separated me from the blesser. Mm. Right? So I'm good now. And then I leave the church. So now I'm like, okay, you know what? I never forget it. We went to a Dallas football game. Now I ain't had a drink or nothing in 10 years. Uh-huh. So everybody else is drinking, and my wife had some alcohol in a bottle in the car. So we left the restaurant. I said, let me go get the car, bring it around front. When I got in the car, I popped the bottle, I took a sip and put it down. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So now they're going.
Was that your first sip?
Huh?
Was that your first sip?
My first sip in 10 years.
Right.
First sip in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So now I started to drink. Right? So I feel the drinking never was my problem. Never had no problem with drinking. Crack was my problem. Drugs, not alcohol. Mm-hmm. So I'm working in Metro, and you know the Metro, like everybody drink. Mm-hmm. There's so many functioning alcoholics at that job, but they don't realize it. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, first I'm just drinking on the weekends. Mm-hmm. Then I started drinking every day. You know, just a little sip when I get off. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, now I'm drinking every day, all day. And on my day off, I'm drinking all day long. Mm-hmm. All day. So now it's becoming a problem in my house. It's a problem now. Mm-hmm. But I can't see myself. Mm-hmm. because I'm so engulfed in it that I'm like, no alcoholic. I'm not no alcoholic. And my wife saying, man, you need some help.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's father was an alcoholic, so I don't know how bad this is affecting her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So she really about to leave, like, man, I can't take you like this. Drinking. I got bottles hidden up under the bed, bottles in the closet. You know, long story short, I got a DOT physical. I go to my DOT physical. I've been doing this for years. I go in there, I start cut my drinking off in time, go in there, get my physical, blow through the thing, and I'm good. But this particular day, I blew. And the man looked at me. He said, man, your number's a little high. He said, sit down for 30 minutes, and I'll call you back and you can blow again.
Mm-hmm.
Blew again, my number still was high. So now I'm busted.
Right. In the program.
But that God intervened for me. Mm-hmm. He did that for me. Mm-hmm. Had I continued to drink, I'm telling you, I'd be dead right now. Mm. I would have died, man. And right after that, the pandemic came. If I had been drinking during the pandemic, I'd have drunk myself to death. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So my wife said, you got to go in the program. So I know Metro was going to put me in a program. So what I've done, I got on the phone and I put myself in the inpatient program. Mm-hmm. I went to Florida to a place called Banyan. Mm-hmm. I stayed down there for 30 days, right? So I already had the tools and everything because I already been sober for 10 years. Uh-huh. I just stopped working what worked. So I went to Banyan and I reconnected with God. Mm-hmm. I reconnected with the source that kept me sober for 10 years.
Until you just...
Yeah. And for me, it's more than not drinking, right? Not only did I want to not drink, but I don't want to run the street no more.
Right.
I don't want to cheat no more. I don't want the street no more. I don't want to lie no more, right? Drinking, like the man told me, drinking was my problem. Sin was my problem.
Right.
That was my problem. But when I reconnected to the source, listen, I ain't rich. I don't have a ton of money, none of that. But I got a peace of mind. Right. God gave me my family back. Listen to me, he gave me my family back. Mm-hmm. Separated 4 years, and I never thought we'd get back together. Gave me my family back. I got 4 grandkids, 2 kids, everybody healthy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? What more could I ask for?
Right.
What more could I ask for? I could have died out there on the street. Right. I could have OD'd. I could have drunk myself to death. Liver could have failed. All of that could have happened. But God loved me so much that he allowed me to make it back.
Right.
That's why I got to take what happened to me to help somebody else. It's my duty to do that.
Yeah, man, you on every day, bro.
It's my duty to do that.
When I tune in Monday through Friday, man, and I listen to you and Kenny, man, I'm telling you, it feeds my spirit too, brother. I'm gonna tell you right now. And you know, just like you were saying, and I'm gonna go back to a few things you were saying, like when you were saying teaching you how to be a parent, right? And my brother said something that was very that stick with me for life. He said we have imperfectly perfect parents. Talking about my parents, and I had both my parents in my home. Mm-hmm. They wasn't perfect,
right?
They didn't, you know. I think every marriage is about trial and error, right? But again, like you said, you have to have that spiritual foundation. Mm-hmm. Right? You must have that spiritual foundation in order to be successful in life, not That's just right. in marriages, but just in life, period. Right? So, and we learn in our marriages, right? And we got to grow, right? It ain't about your way, ain't about my way, it's about our way. How can we succeed as a couple with our kids, right? Show them what it is, how to be a man. And that's just the reason why I created this platform, Mike, is because most of the young boys out here nowadays, they don't see that in men. They don't have that man in their life to see what it's like, to take them to church.
That's right.
Bible, right?
That's right.
Foundation so that they can be successful in life. So no, I appreciate what you and Kenny are doing, man, because I can tell you, I get on you see me, I get
Yeah,
on,
yeah. And I
I
know you. I know.
get on Monday through Friday, man, and I listen to you guys, man, because you, not only that, you speak in real talk, right?
Yeah,
I remember coming up when I was, I grew up in the Catholic tradition, right? And I remember when I was coming up, it was almost like they were speaking some foreign language, right? It wasn't like how they speak today, right?
right.
And I couldn't say that I grasped what it was about until later on, right? But now I'm in a
Mhm.
church, man, that has opened me up so much as well, right? About life,
Yeah,
right? About God, right? Opened me up as far as my spirituality, right?
yeah.
But this is what our young men need, Mike, and this is what you're doing. And again, if we can just reach one, right,
That's right.
making progress, bro. But I take my hat off to you, and I take my hat off to Neri as well, man, because our queens are the ones who really stick by us.
That's true.
They stick by us, bro. And it
That's
breaks me down. I get sensitive about it because when I think about the women and how we have men out here now who are abusing them, treating them terrible, don't
that's
know
right.
how to open the door for them, don't know how to, pull the chair out for them, don't know how to treat them, right? And it all comes from what you and Mike were talking about just the other day. Unfortunately, that 80s of the crack era is still affecting us today because now
Yeah,
you
you said that.
who who are who had kids now didn't see that example because that's what they were going through. And
Hmm.
now the generational curse need to be broken,
That's right.
right? And this is the way we do it, man. We got to continue to reach out, man, and do these type of things, Mike. But yeah, you got a man. Let me tell you, and how, you and there, you guys are doing well, man.
Oh
You
yeah,
you got a bunch of talent, man. Your kids are doing good. Your grandkids, I see. I look at your Facebook page sometimes. And I see the pictures when you post them, and it's nothing that it gets to my spirit when I see families that are doing well. And
yeah.
I see both parents raising their family. You know, too many times nowadays we have so many single women who trying to raise our boys,
That's
right?
right.
And unfortunately, they can't teach them everything, right?
Oh,
They can't, and this is what they need in their lives. And I'm hoping that we can start something that can change that trajectory, right?
that's right.
Especially in the hoods,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And Mike, what I see, bruh, is heartbreaking.
Crushing every day on the bus is. I'm talking about it'll break your heart. And when you look, when they get on the bus and I look in their eyes and I see no glimmer of hope,
Mm-hmm.
it's like their soul is just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't see anything beyond their circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, this is all it is. I mean, we had a bus driver last week get pistol whipped by a young man. You know what I mean? But the change, that we want to see, it has to start with us first. I got to look at myself first. And no matter how bad the devil try to convince me that it is, we can't give up on these people. We can't give up on these children. We can't give up on each other because a lot of people counted me out, but it was a whole lot of people prayed for me and helped me. They didn't give up on me.
Right. Right.
They did not give up on me. So I refuse to give up on these people out here.
Right. Right. Well, you doing your job. You doing your part, bruh.
Nah,
I'm
you doing your this platform is awesome, man. I watched Melvin earlier today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good dude, man.
Good dude, man.
Look, the folks that I had on, man, I tell you, Mike just had amazing stories. And again, the foundation. Look how God has changed each and every one of their lives.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
talk about the drug dealer, the drug user. You
yeah,
talk about, just all spectrums of life, man.
yeah.
The pastor, the bishop. You heard the John Battle story.
Mm-hmm.
So
John
many.
Baptist, that's right.
I mean, look what God has done. Now John is a bishop.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they
yeah,
call they call me deacon in my church.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, I used to curse like a sailor, man. I'm like,
yeah.
man, and I'm like,
Yeah,
what this church has brought out of me is amazing.
Yeah,
It's amazing, man. And just like you were saying, and once you disconnected after 10 years, look what happened.
yeah.
And you had to reconnect in order to grasp hold of what you had.
That's right.
Wow. That's amazing, Mike.
That's
That's amazing.
right.
Man, look, I want to thank you, bro. Man,
Jay, I
amazing,
appreciate this, man. I appreciate this. And
amazing story, bro. Hopefully, just like I told every last the other guys that I interviewed, man. Hopefully, when this pandemic lift, man, that we can do some real things in the community.
yeah,
We ain't gonna just talk about it. We want to be about it.
be about it. That's right.
And be able to, in the Big Brother program. I remember they had that where you had to adopt some kid in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened to the program, man, but we need to reestablish these programs for our little brothers, nowadays. Because
that's right.
what they're saying, when we grew up, just like you said, what you saw in your house, that's what you did.
That's what you're right.
What make them any different?
That's right. That's right.
They see the mom and dad selling drugs. That's what they're gonna want to do because they see the bling bling. They see the new Mercedes. Da da da. They not looking at the big picture.
That's
They looking
right.
but yeah, man. So I just want to thank you, Mike. I'm gonna put you on the spot for a second. You ready?
Mhm.
Man, hit one of them notes for me, man. Go on. Take it. Go ahead, Mike. I know you. Yeah, I know you got something in the back, man. Because I'm gonna tell you,
Got something back.
man, you could blow, bro. I'm gonna tell you. Go ahead, Mike. Take us out of here, Mike.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I just want to thank you, Lord.
Oh my goodness, bruh. I knew you had one back there. I knew you weren't gonna there. My main man. Love you, Mike.
Love you too, man.
Hey, man,
Appreciate you, Drake.
Hey man, hold on for a second. I want to chop it up after this.
Okay.